Canada's defense landscape is shifting tonight, and not quietly. Swedish defense giant Saab has stepped forward with a bold proposal, one that stretches far beyond fighter jets. Saab isn't simply offering Canada new aircraft, it's offering a new economic vision. Buy the jets here and build them here. In partnership with Bombardier, Saab claims it can create up to 10,000 Canadian jobs, a figure that has ignited excitement across the nation and intense debate inside Ottawa. This dramatic offer lands just days after Prime Minister Mark Carney ordered a review of Canada's existing F-35 contract with U.S. defense giant Lockheed Martin, a contract that has become symbolic of America's influence over Canada's air power and over Canada's economy. And with U.S. President Donald Trump escalating a new trade war, Canada suddenly finds itself in a geopolitical tug-of-war. Two titans, two visions, two futures. Saab Gripens versus Lockheed Martin's F-35. And the question hanging over every politician, every worker, every defense analyst tonight is simple but heavy. Is the promise of thousands of Canadian jobs enough to rewrite Canada's air power destiny? Today on Power and Politics, Saab CEO Michael Johansson addressed that question head-on. "Thank you for being here," the host says. Johansson nods, offers a polite smile, and immediately drops something unexpected. He hints that Saab's pitch is about sovereignty, Canada controlling its own skies, design authority, domestic production, technology transfer, industrial ownership. He even says the Gripen doesn't have to replace the F-35. It could work alongside it. And then comes the number that shook the room: 10,000 Canadian jobs. A number first echoed publicly by Canada's own industry minister, Melanie Joly. And suddenly the conversation shifts from aircraft to opportunity, from warplanes to workers, from defense spending to national independence. This isn't just a purchase offer. This is a power play, a challenge to American dominance, and a test of Canada's political courage. And the stakes could not be higher. But beneath the headlines and political theater, there's a deeper, more consequential question emerging. If Saab wants to expand fighter jet production inside Canada, does Canada have to buy the Gripen to make that happen? When pressed on that point, Michael Johansson doesn't hesitate. He admits, carefully but clearly, that the entire industrial transformation, the technology transfer, the production lines, the advanced aerospace jobs, they don't come without the aircraft deal. This isn't charity. This isn't symbolic cooperation. This is business, strategic, high-stakes, geopolitical business. And the CEO is open about it. If we're going to pour billions in technology, capability, engineering, and knowledge into Canada, Canada needs to be part of that ecosystem. In other words, no jets, no jobs. It's a package. A massive transfer of industrial capability isn't something Saab will hand over without a long-term partnership. And Canada, he emphasizes, offers something incredibly rare in today's defense industry: a mature aerospace sector, a world-class industrial base, a skilled workforce, a strategic location. From his perspective, Canada isn't simply a customer, it's a potential hub. A hub that would stand along Sweden and even Brazil as a third major center of Gripen production. But Johansson delivers another critical point, one with long-term implications. This isn't just production, it's design authority, software, maintenance, upgrades, engineering evolution, a sovereign capability pipeline. Jobs not just for assembly, but for technology, for innovation, for the future. And he makes something else very clear. If Canada doesn't fly the aircraft, then the technology transfer loses its purpose. You can't divorce the jets from the jobs. From his viewpoint, the partnership only works if Canada joins the platform, flies the aircraft, grows with the system and continuously upgrades alongside it. Because without that, there's no anchor, no continuity, no integration. Johansson is dangling an entire aerospace future in front of Canada, but only if Canada commits. This isn't side agreement, no symbolic industrial gesture. This is all or nothing. And suddenly, the stakes of the decision appear far higher than anyone in Ottawa expected. At this point in the interview, the conversation shifts from concept to reality. The host leans forward. Is this more than just assembly? Is Canada being offered a screwdriver factory or a full aerospace ecosystem? Johansson answers without hesitation, and his words reveal something far larger than anyone expected. He explains that this isn't simply about bolting parts together. Saab is offering Canada the chance to birth, inside its borders, an industrial machine capable of producing a complete, combat-ready fighter aircraft from nose cone to tail fin. A factory that rolls out an entire fighter jet, not shipped in crates, not half-assembled, not dependent on foreign oversight, a real aerospace capability. And that's only the beginning. He outlines 4 pillars. 1. Final assembly and testing. Canada would have the capacity to build, test, and validate the final aircraft. 2. Component and parts manufacturing. Companies across the country would produce critical systems, hardware, and structural elements. 3. Software and design development, because modern aircraft aren't defined by metal, but by code. 4. Flight test and R&D centers, a full scientific and technological ecosystem. This is not a typical defense contract. This is nation building. The host probes further. Would this be larger, more robust than what Saab has in Brazil? Johansson pauses, chooses words deliberately, then confirms. Brazil is a model, but Canada could go further. Why? Because Canada already has a strong aerospace backbone. Bombardier, IMP, CAE, training, simulation, flight systems, engineering. Canada has the soil. Saab wants to plant the seeds. Then comes the number few believed was real: 10,000 jobs. The host presses him, direct or indirect, over what time frame? Johansson offers precision. Building the capability, training the workforce, establishing factories, launching deliveries would take 3 to 5 years before full-scale output. In other words, Canada wouldn't just buy a fleet. Canada would build a future. What Saab is offering Canada is not just economic stimulus, but generational transformation. This is the kind of deal that reshapes a country's industrial DNA. The conversation now moves from promise to timeline. Johansson lays it out clearly. If Canada selects a dual fleet, he says, we can start delivering aircraft in 3 years. But realistically, the Canadian Air Force will see operational jets somewhere between 3 and 5 years, depending on setup. And it's not just about delivering planes. Over those formative years, Saab plans to build the workforce, establish supply chains, and ramp up the entire ecosystem. By the end of that period, around 5 years, the country could be looking at up to 10,000 jobs. Direct jobs, indirect jobs, supply chains, research, development, continuous upgrades. Because the Gripen is software-defined, its architecture allows weekly upgrades, not long, inflexible block upgrades. This ensures Canada isn't buying static technology. It's buying a system that evolves over time. The host presses further. How does this compare to what Saab promised in Brazil? Back in 2018-2019, reports suggested the Brazilian operations could create 14,000 jobs. But recent numbers show just a few hundred assembly plant jobs. Did things fall short? Johansson explains patiently. The first aircraft in Brazil will roll out later this year, he says. Much of the supply chain is still ramping up. So yes, there are jobs, but the system will expand as deliveries begin. Canada is in a stronger position because the aircraft is already in production. Transferring technology and scaling operations will be much faster than in Brazil. Here's the critical part for Canada. The country is at a crossroads. CF-18 jets are nearing the end of their life cycle. The F-35 contract is under review. Saab offers a dual fleet option, but skeptics worry about gaps in operational capacity during the transition. Johansson addresses this head-on. He assures that with careful planning, Gripens can be delivered without leaving Canada defenseless, and that a dual fleet is feasible without compromising sovereignty or operational readiness. As the interview reaches its conclusion, Johansson steps back and clarifies Saab's position. We can start delivering aircraft to Canada from our Swedish or Brazilian hubs in 3 years, he says. And within 5 years, we're confident that Canada can have a fully operational industrial and aerospace capacity. He emphasizes one crucial point: Saab isn't campaigning. This isn't politics, it's information. We're here to answer questions, provide detailed insights, and outline what this deal could mean for Canada, he says. The decision is entirely up to Canada. And what does that decision encompass? More than jobs, more than aircraft. It's about sovereignty, about participation in the next generation of fighter aircraft, about unmanned systems and future technologies, about ensuring Canada is not just a customer, but a partner in shaping the skies of tomorrow. Johansson notes that much has changed since the previous evaluation 4 years ago. Saab has advanced the Gripen system, markets have shifted, and Canada's evolving defense relationships, such as its agreements with the European Union, have altered the strategic landscape. The host presses, when can Canada expect a decision? Months? Years? Johansson answers carefully. As soon as possible, of course. Canada needs to weigh the trade-offs, political, industrial, and strategic. But once the information is fully delivered, the decision will rest with Canada. He makes one last point crystal clear. This isn't an ultimatum. Saab is not trying to push the F-35 out. The Gripen could collaborate with the F-35, creating a dual fleet that maximizes capability while building domestic expertise. The interview concludes on that note. Saab has laid out its cards. The clock is ticking. Canada now holds the power and the responsibility to decide its aerospace future. This is the kind of negotiation that defines decades. Not just jets, not just jobs, but sovereignty, industrial mastery, and the future of Canadian air power. Saab has shown what's possible. Now it's up to Canada to act.